All right.
Okay, so do you want to tell me your intention for today?
My intention for today is to have a clearer sense of what my true self is and be more aligned with it as much as possible.
Huh, okay. All right, thanks. Do you want to tell me what brought you here?
What brought me here is that I feel like there's a lot of confusion that I have with my thinking and my decision making skills. And so I just am trying to have more clarity and to be able to understand how my thinking is influencing my feeling and my behavior.
All right, that's a very good answer. And how you answered me, you were coming from the place that also gives you confusion, believe it or
Yeah.
not. How can you tell? How did you know? How did you know? Yeah, like how did you know that?
I'm just, I feel like I'm trying to like talk through it or see and then like what comes up as I'm saying it. I was like, does this sound okay? Is this coming up? All right, but it's just, yeah, it doesn't feel like I guess like a very strong foundation. It's kind of like a little bit foggy. Just trying to like
Okay, great. Okay. So this is interesting because as you may know, like I can kind of like read vibrations and I'm quite intuitive. So how I feel things will be different than how you feel things just because we have different bodies. So how I could tell that you weren't in your, let's say, your true self is going to be different than how you can tell whether or not you are in your true self or if other people are not in their true selves. Like your body is a different instrument than mine. So us just getting to know how your body works would be of great help here. So I just want to point out that when I asked you the question, like, what brought you here? You had this like long, very well thought out answer. It was like a very, like good essay type sentence, but there was a frequency that I felt. And then when I said that your answer is good, but it came from the same place that gives you confusion, you're like, yeah, like that. Did you feel the difference? Yeah, yeah, like that was your true self. That was your intuition. Could you tell the difference in the two frequencies?
yes, I think I feel like I disconnect from my body. Like it's like up in my head and then I totally forget like the rest of my body. So when I would be speaking, it's like up here.
Yeah.
And then maybe when I confirmed yes, it felt like maybe it was more in my body. Um, for some reason, some audio just started playing randomly and on something. Is it okay if I
Yeah.
go shut it
Yeah. Yeah.
off? I
Yeah.
have no idea why.
I'm going to pause.
Just like the iPad was
That's
okay.
okay. So, what do you think just happened there? Because you've been in a group with me and you've seen weird things with
Yeah.
electronics and audio. What do you think just happened there?
I don't know if it was trying to distract me from like being in my body or not, but it was strange. There was an iPad that was on the like the kitchen table completely. I didn't play anything on it today, and all of a sudden something just started playing
So
on it.
how does it feel to you to just witness in real life how much energy can do things like turn on an electronic in a different room at a really weird time too, right?
Yeah.
Like how does it feel to just like witness in real time? Okay, that was weird. Like that was energy. Like how does it feel to feel that?
It makes me more aware, I think, of where I'm placing my energy and maybe how much I'm could be placing it outside of myself
Okay,
or
answer again with one word. How does it feel?
okay. Good in like a strange way because it confirms that there is energy working, and like things that we don't see, it actually is influencing what's around us.
How did it feel to be interrupted?
It, I mean, it was surprising and annoying.
Yeah. I felt it being more creepy and victimy. Like, oh
uh,
no, we have to pause the session because you have to go do the thing. I mean, it's okay. It's something we can weather. But if that kept happening, it'd be really hard to hold the session. So I already see kind of like what we're up against, which is, I mean, like, this is how I see it. You don't have to agree with me, but basically, I just have to say it to you. Like, there is energy in your system that thrives off of your being in your mind.
mm-hmm.
It lives in your body and it helps you be disconnected from your body. And so earlier when you're like, oh my God, I go into my head to talk and it's like I'm not in contact with my body, whatever we were doing was starting to help you get in contact with your body, and that thing didn't like it. So it turned on that electronic in the other room because that's one tool it has available to itself. And it did that to distract the session, to keep the session from going deeper. Because most likely, the deeper we go, the more it will be, its life is at risk. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that feels true.
Okay,
That definitely feels true.
So this is just my personal observation. You don't have to agree with this. It doesn't have to necessarily be true in your case, but different things can interrupt different ways. So I've had people put their energy into other humans and have other humans either knock on your door, like with an emergency, or knock on my door with an emergency, and that disrupts the session. Right now, maybe you could get a package from FedEx and you have to sign for it. So like you kind of need to pause the session for something like that. I've seen people have, oh, you've seen this, the boyfriend walk in, the child walk in, like just, they will animate other people almost like zombies and have the zombie come in to disrupt the session. That's one kind of energy. I personally feel like that's the tool of one kind of energy, but I feel like there's a different kind of energy that targets electronics. And today you just saw something in the other room turn on, but I've seen things like, let's say you're supposed to pay me for a session and the payment doesn't go through. And you're like trying your darndest and you're trying like a second and a third method, payment doesn't go through, like, and it can cause frustration and discord. So I've seen that too. I've also seen people try to record their psychic readings with me, and the whole reading, it didn't get recorded. So, right? So like, what flavor energy do you think causes the disruptions with electronics specifically?
Ooh, I'm so attached to electronics in so many ways, even if I think I'm listening to something educational or enlightening. So I think it's so much a part of my life. I just realized, yeah, like distraction all the time.
Okay, I mean, okay, if you are on your electronics all the time, that is one issue. What I'm talking about is, I'll just have to say it. I'm just going to say it. I feel that anger entities tend to disrupt electronics. So, if we have someone, you were in the group with me, a woman just couldn't talk at all, like her Zoom wasn't working, and then suddenly it started working. And the same person also was disruptive, in my opinion, to the whole group. Like her energy was disruptive, and the decisions she made were disruptive. And it was also reflective in how the Zoom was being messed up. So I would say that that's hostility. Like, that person's front face is quite nice, right? But the shadow energy was very hostile. So there might be, if you're like a nice person, which I'm pretty sure you are, like you're a really, really nice person and a lot of your energy is serving others and what their wants and needs are, then all of your frustration, where does it go? it goes into your shadow. And if we're going to do anything to help you release that frustration today, it wants to live in your shadow. It doesn't want to be released. It wants to live. So it will disrupt electronics. How does this land with you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that it wasn't okay for me to express anger, and so I do wonder where that goes. I suffer from migraines, and I feel like that's also like anger that I've been holding in, that doesn't know like how to release. So I just haven't known like what to do with it, or just sometimes wouldn't be aware that I was actually had the anger until after, or like something happens more dramatically to bring my attention to it.
Okay. 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 So releasing the anger, there's like so many ways to do that. And honestly, I think that's a different topic from today. What I'm really interested in is um, let's go back to the mind body feeling disconnected when you want to go into your intuition. So there's this habit I've seen of yours to talk from your mind. Right? And it is part of your front face, it's part of the nice you, right? And I'm sure it gets you really far in your social relationships and at work. Like I'm sure. And I'm sure it started when you were a child and it got you far with your family, I'm sure. So you were like maybe a bookworm and your family liked you because you were quiet and you were in the corner and you took care of yourself. And like your mom was like, oh, I don't need to really worry about her. I'll worry about my other kid who's like, crazy. I'll worry about my other crazy kid. But her, I don't have to worry about her. So you were rewarded for just like, not needing emotional help. Yeah, so that's where it started. But now if we're going to do work to undo that, to get you in touch with your intuition, that stuff is going to come to the surface. How's this landing?
Yeah, that's exactly how my childhood was, and I
Uh-huh.
just like stay out of the way, don't cause any trouble or
Yeah.
whatever. Don't say anything that's gonna disrupt anything. Just like stay in your lane. And
Okay,
yeah,
great. You are a little bit more in your intuition, can you tell?
after from starting
Yeah.
from that, I'm even focusing more on even just like feeling sensations in my body.
Great, great.
Yeah.
How I can tell that you were a little bit more in your intuition was that area that you were just at int, whatever I just said, that was an easy way to just start telling a story and go into your mind. And even if you were talking about your history, you didn't quite get lost in that, And an example of someone getting lost in that would be like, oh my God, I was talking about it with my therapist last week. And, my dad did this and my mom did that. Can you believe that? And I was their child and they weren't seeing me, like when people get into that insistent mode where they talk about what they talked about in therapy last week and all this kind of stuff, they're gone. You had an opportunity to do that, but you stayed. You were answering me and you were saying it resonates. My childhood was just like that, but you were here and I felt you being different. How do you respond to what I just said?
It helps to create some kind of like a gauge to be able to know what scale I'm on,
Yeah.
with that, to refine that more,
And what
for
did you
sure.
have to, okay. And what did you have to do to be more here?
Well, that's a great question. Mm, I don't know, it's hard for me to answer that. Like I said, I was trying to imagine being like more grounded in my body instead of like floating off in my head in that space.
Yeah.
Um,
So, okay. So I'm gonna be honest with you and say that
yeah.
I see restriction in your throat, like even visibly, visually, you're kind of like this, you know. So the voice you're speaking with may not even be your real voice. It might be the
Mm,
voice that other people are comfortable with you having, right? And they probably feel more comfortable with you being the one who takes care of everything. So if I'm your business partner and I just fucked it all up, I'm like, oh my God, could you please save us? You're like, don't worry, I'll work this weekend. I'll take care of it. That's your style, I bet you, right? Like,
It has been, yeah.
yeah. And I can see it in your throat. Isn't it crazy how much I can see of your childhood and your professional persona, even though you didn't even tell me anything, but just in the energy? Like, how is that? What's it like? What's it like for me to say those things to you when you didn't tell me that that's your persona?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. I've mentioned to you that I have to film myself on Zoom a lot, and when I go back and I look at the recordings, I was like, how do I release that? What do I do? Like, I've seen it physically, I can even see it. But I just didn't know what steps to take or how to
So
release.
how did you feel to have me reflect that back to you, as opposed to, do you believe if that's true or not? It's like, I'm telling you, just based on energy, I can see a lot about you. How does it feel to have me reflect that? Or how does it feel to have me kind of go in deep without you necessarily having to report to me, like as a therapist, when I was a child, this and this happened? How does that feel to have the energy being read?
It feels validating. Like it's something that I have felt and that exists, and I like to go straight to the point to get to the issue. Um, Typically, I would probably have to speak for weeks or something with a therapist, and maybe not even have that conclusion be brought to light. So that it makes me feel hopeful that
You're
if that could,
talking,
yeah,
you're talking from that confused place again. Okay, this
yeah,
is the thing. Like, your
yeah.
persona
That's
is
how
not
I feel.
confused. Yeah,
Yeah,
your persona is not confused. Your
yeah.
persona is in charge. Your persona is like really reliable. You're the kind of person, even if it's like not your forte, if I'm like, I'll give you $1,000, invest it for me, and I want $3,000 at the end of this certain period, you'd probably make sure that happens, even if that's not even the thing you normally do. You just do the research and you're just accountable, right? Like, you're just accountable. But this accountability is at cost to your intuition and your inner child. So what ends up happening is, from a place of confusion, you act accountable. But
Yes.
the baseline is confusion. Yeah. And that's
Mhm.
why it's attractive to go further and further and further into your mind. Because if I go, could you please invest this $1,000 for me? You'd have to go really into your mind to take care of that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and the further away you are from who you really, really are, obviously, you're not being your true self. You're more in your head, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what I'll say. What brings up your intuition is, in today's session so far, vulnerability.
Mm.
When you've allowed yourself to be vulnerable, did you see what happened with your body just there? You just took an intake of breath and you just kind of like calmed down. So in today's session so far, every time you've allowed yourself to be vulnerable, which includes my reflecting back to you what I see in your childhood that you didn't tell me, and it's et cetera, like, you just kind of allow it to be, as opposed to fighting and go, no, that's not true. That could have been your reaction as well. Or other people do something. I'm working on that already. Like, I'm working on vulnerability already. Like, a lot of people have a reactive, like a knee-jerk reactive kind of shield that hurts the session. So when you allow yourself to relax into that vulnerability is when you've been more and more your true self.
That makes sense.
I feel fear in you right now.
No, I'm just like, oh, how do I make sure that I am like vulnerable? Sometimes it seems shaky, or like I don't want to think that I am when I'm really like in my head.
So, okay. So like, almost every single time that you've responded to me, almost every single time, not every single time, but almost, it's that confused version of you that goes, yeah, I'm in charge. And you're not being mean to me about it. You're not like, I know that already, which is what some people act like. You do this thing where you like, I'm just going to tell you, you can take it or leave it. I feel you kind of doing this immediate, like taking over the situation, going, yeah, that's in my wheelhouse. Like I can take care of that, you know, that's handleable, you know, like I feel like your persona, like your like fake persona is like, I can handle it.
Mm.
So when I say something like, hey, if you're more vulnerable, you can be in your intuition more. If I say something like that, your I can handle it person is like, yeah. So how do I be more vulnerable? Yeah, how can I do that? You know, and then you're back in your confusion, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to tell you. I think you'll be more direct rather than asking you like, what do you think about this? I think I'm just going to tell you. This is my recommendation to you. Like, if you have a feeling, just like seriously pause for 5 seconds. So even if I ask you a question, pause for 5 seconds, because your I can handle it persona comes in so fast. And I don't think there's quite yet been practice with breaking that, like having like the brakes, like in a car, like breaking that. So you need to have practice with your brakes, because if you're unaware, your persona comes in so fast and then you can't do anything about it. It's kind of like when you're already in your mind, how do you leave your mind? You're kind of like screwed because you're already in your mind. The trick is to not go into your mind to begin with. So just practicing the break would be a really good thing. So if you feel vulnerable, feel vulnerable. And if I say, I sense you feeling fear, even if you think that's not true, sit for 5 seconds. Like, is that true? Like, why does she say that she senses fear? Like, is that true? And if it's true, where is it? You know, like, do you see how that's a very different response than like, oh no, I feel fine. I want to go further in this, you know, like that, I can handle it. So if you have a thought or a feeling that has anything to do with I can handle it, and there's going to be many associated thoughts and feelings with that core center, right? Like, so just know that that's not your real self.
Yeah. Yeah. That I feel that I make decisions before I've actually had a chance to know how I really feel about it. And a lot of times if I'm feeling that it's asked of me, then I just want to provide it, but completely ignoring how my body feels about that or how that's going to affect my life.
That was the most real answer you've given me so far this whole day. How does that
Mm.
feel?
Yeah, it feels it feels real, it feels true.
Hmm. Hmm. I would say that it feels safe. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're safer for me to interact with because you're being more real.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I think it's something that annoys me when I interact with other people if I feel like they're not being their true self, but I
You're in your
am
mind
the one
again.
who's doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
you did your 5 seconds, but then your mind came in. How did it feel to
Mm.
be in your 5 seconds, and how did it feel when you're in your mind?
In my mind, it feels more. Mm, it's not clear.
You were telling a little
It's
story there. Like you're
yeah,
like, oh, I don't like it when other people not like I believe you, but
yeah.
you were using that story to escape the present moment.
Mm, mm,
So, I mean, this just makes logical sense, right? The more you can hold the present moment, the more trustworthy you are. And
mm,
you were just complaining about other people who can't hold the present moment. So the more you can hold the present moment, which is why I was asking you to practice the 5 seconds of pause, that break, that keeps you from going down that mental thing that literally makes you untrustworthy to yourself and to other people. So I'll say this. If there was frustration, hostility, anger in your system that did things like even turn on that electronic at the beginning of the session, why it's there and why your mind probably prefers to keep that going is to keep you from feeling the fear that was underneath that I sense in you. So it's very possible that if there's fear, the mind goes, oh shit, we don't know how to handle that, right? Because if there's no pause, there's no ability to handle the present moment. Cover it over, do something nice front face, do something kind of hostile in the back end. Like this is the pattern I see so far. And that's probably what, again, your mom accepted, right? She probably didn't accept hostility from you, right? And she probably needed you to do your version of investing $1,000 for the family when you were like probably 3 years old. I'm like really sure of that. So it might have been an emotional thing where she didn't give you $1,000 to invest, obviously, you're 3 years old, but she gave you an emotional thing that she couldn't take care of. She made you take care of it. So how is this all landing?
Mm. I mean, it's what my experience has been, and I just keep thinking like I've focused on giving the right answer instead of just being able to tap into how I'm actually feeling. Yeah.
Okay. So one homework was pause, right? Pause for 5 seconds. If you have a feeling, just feel the feeling, because we're really trying to get you into a place of self-mastery where your mind isn't in control. You are in control. And if your mind does crazy, weird shits that like everyone's mind does, right? Everyone's mind does really stupid stuff. We don't run with it and then allow that to then become our reality. Like literally, if you're in your mind, you're probably outside of your own boundaries. So this is also boundaries work, believe it or not. So if you're in your mind, you are violating your own boundaries. If you're in your intuition or you're being your true self, you're inside of your boundaries. And being inside of your boundaries feels safe, right? And being able to keep yourself within your own boundaries helps you trust yourself. So it's all interrelated. This is another, like, let's say, I don't want to call it a homework. It's more like a practice. Honestly, that break thing, it feels like homework. It's like, do it. I'm assigning it to you, do it, you know? This other thing feels like a practice that like is a longer form thing to adopt over life. And it will probably involve different homeworks. But the practice itself is, if you're used to giving your energy to others, especially outside of consent, especially with this front face of being a nice professional person, right? Where you have to like kind of eat your anger and eat your hostility, eat your frustration. That's because you're probably unconsciously used to the other person being like the center and you being in the periphery and you supporting whatever's going on in the center. So let's just say when you're growing up, your mom was in the center, even more so than your dad. That's what I feel. You know, sometimes it's the dad, but usually it's the mom, honestly. You have to be used to your being the center. So, okay. See, that was a wordless understanding. You were being in your intuition. You didn't even have to say anything to me or give me a story or anything. I felt it. Okay, good. In this session, you're the center. So if I ask you for an answer, don't try to please me. Don't try to make me the center. That's disordered. That's you're recreating your energetic relationship with your mother with me. I won't be in my boundaries if you make me the center. And I prefer to be in my boundaries with you. So like, even if the session is to like help you feel your boundaries or whatever, it's interesting though that let's just say my healthy boundaries come into play because I'm like, you're making me the center. Why did you do that? I don't want to be the center, you know? Like it's your session. That doesn't make sense to me. Does this make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you did mention something earlier, like before we pressed record today, and I want to bring it up. And I think that this can be homework. So I was saying that making yourself the center is practice, or yeah, it's a practice. It's like a lifelong practice, honestly. I'll give you a baby example that may not come from your life, and then I'll bring up your real life example. So a baby example is, let's say, You get into the cab and the cab driver has music playing or a radio station playing that you don't like. So you're not at your highest vibrational outcome if you're listening to that music or listening to that radio station, talk radio or whatever. Do you say something to the cab driver? You know, who is the center of that experience? What would be your answer?
Yeah, normally I would not. I would not
Yeah.
say
So,
anything. Yeah.
so who, in that case, who are you making the center?
The cab driver.
Yeah, so you're saying that you're basically saying through your behavior that his experience is more important than your experience. Okay, so who's paying whom for what service, like transactionally, just on a more basic level of things? Who is paying whom for their service?
Yeah, I would be paying for that, but
Okay. So whose experience is supposed to be the center?
the client,
There you go.
yeah.
So that is a moment of disorder. That is a
Mhm.
moment of giving the cab driver more importance than your experience. When transactionally, money-wise, the setup is you're supposed to be happy with the driver driving the way you want them to. You tell them to make a left and not a right. You tell them to do this weird thing, back road, whatever, you know. They're basically supposed to follow through unless it completely goes against their boundaries, of course, you know. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And all my interactions
Okay.
are you, yeah, me just trying to make sure that the other person's comfortable, or just seeing everyone else's needs, or just everyone else is being like more deserving, or
yeah, you're in
like,
your mind again.
yeah.
I believe you. I believe everything you're saying is
Yeah.
true. You know,
Yeah.
you're not, what you're saying is true, but what you're doing is you're kind of like giving me the flavor of your character. You know, like let's say you're in a play and you're playing a character and you're like, oh, my character has this in her wallet. My character didn't get over her ex and that's why she's not ready for love. I'm like, that's all true about your character, but I don't care about your character. So yeah, like so all right. So the practice is to make yourself the center. And this is a very deep philosophical, spiritual practice. It's a huge practice. We could talk for a very long time on why this practice is important for you being a human, you being a spirit embodied. That's probably a different session. But I think you can see the homework. So one homework would be like you get into a cab, who's the center. You have to behave as if you're the center, even if it's uncomfortable. So it might be uncomfortable to say, make a left, not a right. It might be uncomfortable to say, hey, could we please ride without any music today? Or could you please change the radio station to X? You know, you might feel uncomfortable doing that, but that's okay. But that behavior must be done to make you the center. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you feel uncomfortable, don't let that be some weird indication. Oh, if I'm uncomfortable doing it, that must mean that it's bad or I'm outside of my boundaries. You know, don't overthink it because your character, remember, your character comes on strong, almost like immediately. And your character comes on as soon as you're outside of consent. Your character brings you outside of consent. And when you're outside of consent, your character takes over. So when you get into the cab and the music's wrong, pretty much for your true self, you're already outside of consent. So remember that space I told you to practice. In that space, okay, you're already outside of consent, but you can't let your character take over. And in that space of being outside of consent, you bring yourself back into consent without letting your character take over. Could you please change the radio station? Because if you have no space, you sit down in the cab, the radio is already the wrong station, you're already outside of consent, your character takes over and you go, oh, well, I'm happy that he's happy. You know, he must need this song for his job or whatever you say to yourself, you know? Or I want a good rating from him or whatever you say to yourself. So that's why the homework of the space is really important, but the practice is like this, like literally 24/7, like literally 24/7. So I'm going to bring up something that you brought up. Holding space for class. Who's the center?
That's a good question. I think as a teacher, sometimes, well, I've been taught to be like a facilitator
Yeah,
and
so
to,
energetically, we have to reduce it down. Someone's the center and someone's the periphery.
Mhm.
So who's the center? When you're teaching a class, who's the center?
I don't feel like I have as much of a problem taking the center
So you're like
role.
literally not answering me directly
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
times.
I'm like, I'm trying to like feel and then to see like I think I feel uncomfortable being the center, but then there's a sense of I have also more control. Mm,
I literally,
like I think I waver back and forth. Like I don't think it's just one or the other. Like I'm not the center with my students or I'm the center all the time with my students.
here's the thing. How you learned
Yeah.
the center periphery thing, how you learned that was with your mom, and she always did it
Mhm.
outside of consent. So
Mhm.
deeply ingrained in you might be this idea that if I'm the center, I'm a bitch, or if I'm the center, I'm an abuser, you know? And so a lot of people need to practice being in their boundaries without necessarily feeling like now I'm the perpetrator of others.
Mhm.
Because if you learned in quotation marks boundaries, or more accurately, if you learned how to always be outside of your boundaries all the time, which is most people are outside of the boundaries 100% of the time. If you learned how to do that, you never learned how to be inside of your boundaries, and the only boundaries you know are to be outside of your boundaries and for someone else to be happy. So
Mhm.
like it's a very disordered learning where like someone else is happy, and that's the cost I need to pay by being outside of my boundaries, and that's just how life is, you know. And it's really interesting how we met because you saw me hold space for a group. Saw me hold space for a group, and my boundaries were extremely important in that group because if I was outside of my own boundaries, that group completely collapsed, right? But me being inside of my boundaries is what allowed that group to be as good as it was. And if I was not inside my boundaries the whole time, that whole group would have collapsed and it would have been a bad group, you know? So in that class, which is a very different dynamic than what we're having today, you and I are having one-on-one today. So this is very different. Um, in that group, who was the center?
You were
Yeah.
the
You even asked
center.
me a question, right? And I was like, I'm not going to answer that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that feel? How did that feel where I'm like, that's not within the parameters of today for you know?
It felt like I wasn't personally offended or anything. It just yeah made me more aware of like how am I listening? Am I being present? And how am I processing things? So in a way, like showed that I was distracted a bit. So it just brought my attention back to like, okay, focus on what the actual question or the present moment was instead of trying to formulate some kind of like interpretation of the experience.
Okay. So I'm going to say that my boundaries probably taught you about your boundaries.
Mm.
So even if I'm in quotation marks the center, my holding that with integrity teaches you. Whereas if I was like, oh, let me feel that question and I just answered your question, you would have gotten what your ego wanted, right? You would have gotten what your mind wanted. But would that have been me being a good teacher?
Um, no, not if it's to model boundaries. No. And
Well, I would have pleased you, right? But I would have been not feeling my own boundaries and not holding the center of what I wanted class to be. And class was
mm,
focused on a very specific topic. So I can, right? Like anyone can hold a class where you just field 100 questions from 100 people and they're all over the place. That's some kind of class. But that class doesn't have that energetic focus that I really care about. So
mm,
even in today's session, I'm saying you're the center. I'm saying you're the center, but we can't have this unless I'm still in my boundaries 100% of the time. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the feeling is very different where, I mean, this is a complicated question, but I think it's important to address because it's a real life application for you. So for you to be the center, you're not just sucking up everyone's energy, right? Doing whatever you want, being a tyrant. You're creating the best environment for you to give your best as the teacher, most likely. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Yeah.
not just like, lording it over people, right? And then abusing your power or your authority. So you're just creating the construct for you to be at your best. Because when you're at your best, then you can teach the best and they can receive the best, they as the students. And then it's like literally a win-win for everyone. But you kind of need to teach people how to be in your container. And I'm feeling psychically attacked right now. Do you feel your mind kind of doing something?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, that's been the issue of like how to be able to have that container or to feel like a certain level that I of respect.
Okay. So how does it feel for you to hear that I'm saying that I feel psychically attacked right now?
It makes me realize like how defensive or like how much how much a barrier that is to get through. Like I don't want to do that to
Okay,
anybody.
so
Yeah.
earlier your energy turned on electronics
Mm-hmm.
because it was threatened. Now it's directly attacking me
Mm-hmm.
because it's threatened. And what it's literally doing is it's literally entering my body, entering my head, and keeping me from being centered or focused. It's
Mm-hmm.
keeping me from being my intuition. And honestly, it doesn't feel good, So for me to be in my boundaries, what do I have to do? I want to hold the session with you. That's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to hold the session with you and for me to be in my boundaries, do you think I'm okay being psychically attacked?
No.
No, it's not in my boundaries. But you can see that it's easy for that to happen, right? You also see that I hold a fucking tight container. And I cut off people's heads when they do the smallest thing because the smallest thing is a big thing, is a really, really, really big thing. So do you see why there was a woman in our group who drank water? And I'm like, you need to leave. Do you see why I said that?
Yeah.
Why do you think? Like just fill in a little bit.
That it's just gonna bring like more chaotic energy or take away from the focus of the class that is not going to contribute positively to it.
Totally. So basically, I had a rule, which is don't drink water. And she just started drinking water. So she completely did not pay attention to the rules. Maybe she didn't even read them. She just didn't care. So she was in the class being completely parasitical, not caring about the container at all. And I knew that if she stayed in the class, her energy would be crazy and probably do things bad to my body. So she didn't respect me and she didn't respect the class and she didn't respect the other class members who were, paying attention to the rules. So I just kicked her out. She doesn't belong there, and I have consequences. That's how I have good boundaries. And a lot of people are afraid to do things like have consequences like that. So you brought up this idea of respect. I can only do the water thing. And I did it fast, right? As soon as I saw it, that's because I respect myself. I respect myself and I believe in the rules I lay down because this is how I can best serve you as your teacher. So back to you and the group that you serve, so you're serving them, right? This is complex, but it makes sense. You're serving them as the teacher. And in order to serve them best, you have to be in your highest vibrational outcome because wherever the teacher is at is where the class is pegged, right? Right. If you have an alcoholic teacher, that class is going to be pegged right there, right? So wherever the teacher is at is where the class is pegged. So you have to be pegged as high as possible for you. So you have to create the environment that helps you be at your highest possible, whatever that means for you. And it will be different for you than for me, because we hold way different kinds of classes and we're different people. So whatever you need is going to be different than whatever I need. But you have to know what that is, and you have to lay that law down and kind of coach people into knowing how to behave towards you so that you can be at your best. And it's only when you can be at your best that then you can serve them and you can give them the best that they signed up for. So it's like, it looks like if I call you the center, it might feel weird because you're like, well, I'm supposed to serve them, you know? But that's the only way you can serve them. It's like the queen serving her kingdom. She needs to have the best food. She needs to have the best clothes. She needs to have all of her queenly energy. Because if she's like this kind of weird queen who's like, oh, I feel so bad that everyone else is cleaning the toilets, let me clean the toilets so that everyone else, the kingdom just collapses. Do you know what I mean? Like literally that kingdom will be invaded like tomorrow because the energy of self-worth isn't there. That's the job of the queen, literally. She's supposed to be like of high value, right? And know her worth and command respect based on her own self-respect. That's literally what a queen is supposed to do. She's not supposed to clean toilets. Someone else is supposed to do that. So if you get confused in your job as a teacher and you start cleaning the toilets, you know what I'm saying? Then everything collapses. And in my case, cleaning the toilets is just answering whatever question comes up, is tolerating people being disrespectful based on how I say this is respectful or that is disrespectful. You know, it's my decision what's respectful or disrespectful. But if people cross that line, you're out. So how's this landing with you? Because that was kind of like a mental question you had before we started.
Yeah, it's a lot of times I don't have self-respect. So, or I'm not feeling it. So I can see, I do come in with like high energy and try to create, like a welcoming environment and things like that. But it's true that wavering of the self-respect does interfere with the container, and things can, or at least I can feel like chaotic or something because of it.
It's so interesting that you understand the chaotic energy. Like you totally get it. Like, I'll say this. Everyone default mode is in their minds. And if you as teacher, you're in your mind, you're going to make everyone be in their mind too. So anyone in their minds is outside of their own boundaries. So you're inviting in a shit ton of chaos. And I'll say that a lot of times when people end up working with me, they feel calm and safe because I behave in such a way where I kind of get you to be in your intuition, where I almost like require you to be in your intuition. You know, I'm certainly in my intuition. And that helps other people feel their boundaries and be in their own boundaries. So it's not just a matter of like, do you respect yourself and therefore can your students also respect you? It's kind of like, it's number one, are you the center, right? And if you're the center, then you can be in your intuition. And if you can be in your intuition, it helps everyone else be in their intuitions and serve you what you need to be the best teacher. And then you're not serving their goddamn egos outside of consent, you know? Because if they're in their egos, you're in your egos, everyone's outside of consent. And so that's why you might be losing a lot of energy if you are in your ego serving everyone else in their egos. So that's kind of a lower pegged class, right? So I would say that what your boundaries are probably are the things that keep you in your intuition, whatever that is. How's that landing?
Yeah. I just yes, I really want, I want to get there. So I just
It's hard.
yes, I feel like the resistance, but it's like something that I really want to experience.
You've already
As much as
experienced it
possible.
today. No, you've already experienced it today. The first time was when you said yes, you know. Oh wow, look at the Zoom.
And I feel like I was feeling so strongly that it just like blocked on Zoom for a moment.
I think what's happening is whatever is happening is starting to chip away at the ego false self character.
Just see it frozen.
Am I back?
Yeah. I hear your voice, but I don't see the image moving. Yeah,
That's
and I
interesting.
totally see or what you're talking about, like with the technology and the energy.
Yeah. So
But I can't see anything moving. I can only see my image moving.
the anger in your system is doing this.
Yeah.
So the more you're in your intuition, the less you feed your anger.
I'm not able to hear everything. It's still kind of like broken up.
Okay, I'll pause this. I'll pause this. Again. Okay. Okay. So let's close. I was saying that this disruption was being caused by your anger, and being in your intuition will decrease this shadow anger. How does that land with you?
That yes, that feels very, very true. And I want that. Yes.
Okay. And I was saying that you were already in your intuition throughout today, starting with when you said yes, and at the top of our session. And there was another time when you were just like silently nodding and you were in your intuition. So intuition is short, oftentimes it's wordless, and it's a feeling of safety in your body. And I think the homework is really to just not roughshod over it with your old character. So anytime you want to give a good answer, that's your old character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be comfortable either not talking, like just being silent, or sounding stupid. Like you have to risk that, because believe me, you won't sound stupid, but to you, you'll sound stupid. Yeah, it's a psychic attack. Okay, so what did you learn today? What are your conclusions? Please, from your intuition and not your character.
Okay, this is taking a lot of practice because I see reverting. So I learned that there needs to be time given to how I am truly feeling. So being able to pause instead of just feeling like I need to immediately provide a polished answer in what sounds good or what sounds intelligent or what sounds like aware. I also learned that there's a lot that I'm holding in and holding on to, because it feels so scary, I think, to like go in that direction, to be vulnerable, because it feels like I don't know if there's gonna be like what kind of consequences or something, I think. So there's like some kind of fear. And I also know about like being able to see myself more as in, to be in the center, to not give my power away so easily, and how that influences my interactions with people and my energy level. I might, yeah, I feel like it. It just froze right now. So I'm like, oh, I'm just feeling, yeah, like I'm resisting myself from going into that deep, vulnerable place. Mm. And I don't think I expected that as much. So I just want to make sure that I do really know what that feels like and that I can go there more often.
Great. Because you're there right now.
Mm.
You're there right now. I'll just say a couple of things, like where you're at right now is the frequency you want to consider the center. You want energy to come to that
Mm.
with your own behavior and other people's behavior. So your boundaries are whatever would protect this right now. The other thing is you talked about this like fear of the unknown, this kind of thing. That fear comes from your character dying. So the only thing that will happen after that is a higher vibration. So that's like I'll call it a false fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just like kind of say that right now. Anything else before we end?
I just want to make sure that I have a good sense of like what this feeling is. So I just don't trample over it or make like something in my head where I'm like telling myself I feel a way, but I'm not actually feeling it. I feel
Yeah.
like some sadness, but I think it's just like what you're saying. It's like letting go of something that's not really me, but it feels like it's what I've known for so long.
I would say the fear is false. I think the sadness is real. And I'm pretty sure the sadness is what your inner child has been keeping to herself that her mom didn't see her this whole time.
Mm.
So I would say the more sadness you feel, probably the better.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. So
It became clear again. That was so, yeah, it was so strange. Like like it's a little distorted right now, even still, like the image of the video.
that's okay. We will end now. And
Okay.
yeah, maybe we can continue this some other time. Right. Bye.